Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live. I'm Tulio Surgusa, broadcasting from Southern California, and today is Wednesday, October 27th, 2021. Another month's almost gone by already. And we have joining us today a very special guest from Northern California, Dave Landa, who's the CEO of Kintone, and of course, joined by my co-host, Carlos Ponce in Cuernavaca, Mexico. Hi, guys. Welcome to the show today.
Pleasure to be here as ever, Tulio.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks so much.
We're going to be talking about trust and empowerment and inclusion today. Very timely topic, very important topics. And we're looking forward to having this conversation for the next 20 to 30 minutes. And we want to invite you all watching to join us. If you have questions, you can submit those questions at Dojo Live on Twitter. We will look at those questions and post them for our guests. Before we get started with the topic today, Dave, would you please just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Tulio. Yeah, Dave Landa. I'm currently the CEO of Kintone Corporation. But I think, in general, from a personal perspective, I tend to be a bit of an adventurer. Going back from my earliest days of my career, I had left college and moved out to Asia with just a few $100s in my pocket to explore the culture, learn Mandarin Chinese, and sort of seek out my future. Ended up spending 10 years out there throughout Asia and made a lot of contacts that still to this day I retain and maintain. And after I came back from Asia, I've been involved in software as a service and technology now for over 20 years back in the San Francisco Bay Area with a few different companies over these years, and joined Kintone just about 7 years ago, which is a Japanese public company. So I helped start up this U.S. subsidiary company with one of the board of directors of the parent company about 7 years ago. And we've been building and growing it ever since.
Wow. What an amazing adventure. I was speaking to someone this morning who went to a different city for a project for 2 months and ended up staying there for 10 years. But going to a whole nother continent, that's with a couple of bucks in your pocket. Now that's an adventure. Well, thanks for being with us. Tell us a little bit about Landa. Kintone. What is it that the company does?
Yeah, sure. Kintone is really a digital workplace platform, and it's one of the leading players in what's called the no-code movement, really a movement to democratize software development. And it essentially enables anyone in an organization who has a sort of data and a workflow and a team to manage to be able to create custom software solutions to be able to centralize and manage that work, because it's all based on a drag and drop capabilities of creating really quite complex software solutions. So it's a digital workplace platform that allows folks to create custom software solutions and then manage those operations through pretty significant collaboration tools. So there's a lot there, but we can parse that out. But basically, we're democratizing software and improving teamwork.
Interesting. First, I started thinking, oh my goodness, we're going to put 6,000 people of our parent company out of business with this platform. Why do you need software engineers if you could do it yourself? But I'm sure it's a little bit more than that. So let's go right into the topic. Carlos, please, let's kick it off. Looking forward to seeing what we can unpack today.
Thank you, Tulio. And thanks, of course, Dave, for being with us today. So in case you're wondering, for the viewers out there, what building trust and empowerment through inclusive corporate decision-making and problem-solving involves, that's exactly what we'll be discussing today, and the context of the topic chosen by our guest today. And the topic is systems of inclusion, building trust and empowerment. So, Dave, the first question that I have for you today is, why did you choose this particular topic, and why did you feel it might be relevant for today's day and age? Thank you.
Sure. Well, the reason I chose it is it's something that we actually try to do both internally at Kintone within our organization on a very persistent basis, but also try to encourage our clients utilizing the Kintone platform to pursue these types of systems of inclusion to build this type of trust and empowerment amongst their team members. We think that having an empowered and trusting employee base creates a much greater happiness within an organization, but also much greater productivity amongst team members. And so it's something we think about all the time, and we work on methods internally as well as tools to get there. So it's always top of mind when we're thinking about, let's say, our next quarterly, thinking about a new solution for a client. It's about information transparency and how that creates systems of inclusion.
Thank you so much, Dave. Okay, Tulio, back to you, please.
So, Dave, I'm hearing undertone of the kind of culture where there's openness and also one perhaps that's not traditionally as hierarchical as others. And I'm just curious, Japanese companies are traditionally more structured, more corporate, more hierarchical. That has been historically the trend, more command and control type structures. How is this coming out of that environment? What's that been like for an organization that I dare say is very different than the traditional corporate culture in that country? Can you share a little bit about what that journey's been like and how that's been perceived by people who come work there, for example?
Yeah, definitely. Very, very insightful question, Tulio. That's a really interesting point that comes up a lot. So it was the culture of this organization when I first was introduced to it, almost 8 years ago now, was fascinating to me because I also understood traditional Japanese corporate culture to be very hierarchical, very command and control. But this parent company is called Saibos of Kintone. And that means cyber kid in Japanese. And they have been really pushing the envelope for over 20 years in terms of new ideas of modern corporate culture. And so there's been, at times quite a bit of backlash. But the leadership of this organization has been on like presidential councils in Tokyo about transforming business culture in Japan. And so they've been very much at the cutting edge. And so it was exciting for me to join. Now, having said that, it's always a fresh, new, somewhat unsettling experience, I think, for folks who join the company thinking that, this is maybe a traditional command and control hierarchical type organization. But yet they find out that the focus is constantly on empowering individuals and decentralizing control systems, decentralizing decision-making and problem solving. And so it is kind of a constant re-educating in terms of the culture here, which to me is very exciting and very interesting.
Very interesting. We have a similar culture in the Ancora, Mexico business unit. It takes us almost 7 weeks to untrain people sometimes from their previous environments. I know Carlos has got a question, but before I pass it back to him, I have a follow-up question to that shift that this organization has made, and also the fact that I guess they're influencing the culture overall to make that shift. What's that been like in terms of the folks that come in from the traditional command and control hierarchical structure and basically having to unlearn some of those things where they can just freely be themselves, speak up their mind, or encouraged to speak up? What's that process been like for some of those employees? And do you have any stories of people that, like, fast forward 2 years later, have been completely transformed as individuals as a result of this?
Yeah, great question. I think for us, it's been really important to develop some regular sort of exercises and methods to encourage that transformation, and have tools in place to be able to constantly reinforce that type of culture we're looking for. And I think, to a certain degree, people are coming to our organization because they have a desire to move in this direction. But there are certainly folks who have come to the organization who, even though they have a desire to move in that direction, it takes a while to get there. And we do, we have applications and we have regular meetings, and we encourage people to share problems, to raise their hand, identify problems, list them down in an application that's, visible across the company. And then we sort of require leadership to review those problems, review those issues, regardless of how well defined they are. They could be what we call moya moya, which is just like something that's kind of bothering you, but it's not exactly clear. It's kind of some sort of cloudy, fuzzy thing that's kind of annoying you or something. It's called a moya moya in Japanese, but we have these as regular activities to share those issues, and then require leadership to review those and address those. And, one of the things is always a challenge is people to feel comfortable sharing issues. They don't want to be, a problem themselves. They don't want to, get people's maybe eyes off the ball, or be known as a complainer. But we have to constantly encourage this through sort of defined exercises. And I think it has had over time that impact of saying, yes, you know what? I share this issue. Other people agree with me. Other people are able to also raise their hands. And then, leadership does address these. And so it's just a reiteration of that allows people to start transforming themselves in terms of the information they're willing to share.
Dave,
Oh, so we have a question from the audience after you go. I just wanted to bring that up.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Tulio, of course. Yeah. Before I lose my train of thought, Dave, I'd like to ask you about, we're discussing building trust and empowerment. And I can see how easy it would be for a company like Kintone to be adopted in certain spaces and verticals. Like, for example, technology is just a natural environment for these types of approaches and platforms and tools. But when it comes to, let's say, having a different space or a different industry in mind, like a more traditional type of organization, more that has reminiscent of the industrial area, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And my question to you would be, how do you reach out to these people, and how do you, let's say, build a critical mass of support for, let's call it, for your technology? Or how do you evangelize to them, even to those who might be a little bit resistant or adamant towards adopting these new types of approaches, collaborative approaches?
Yeah, great question. There are definitely, very much industries that have sort of entrenched interests, or, are traditional in nature in terms of how they do things. They've been doing it the same way for, hundreds of years. So this type of transformation can be very scary or unsettling. I think you see that, across the board, lots of organizations, regardless of the industry, are looking toward traditional digital transformation to become more productive and more efficient. But I think what we're talking about primarily is more like information transformation, right? Not only are you deploying new software to create a more productive workflow and collaboration environment, you're deploying a digital workplace where now information itself is going to be much more accessible. And so that is unsettling. And what we generally do in those scenarios is that, Kintone, again, getting back to the core product, it empowers people to create a solution for a particular problem they're dealing with. And so generally what we do is start small. We have a big philosophical vision about what we're doing, but what we're trying to do is solve problems for individuals and teams in particular. And so if we can come in and really turn around a process, a workflow, and make it more transparent, make it more efficient, more productive, more collaborative, then that's a success. And the folks who are involved in that team and in that workflow recognize that. And then people who are maybe on the periphery of this new sort of implementation will be like, oh, I can see how this could work for something that I'm struggling with. And so it's usually, kind of call it a land and expand, but we usually will come in, solve a specific issue, a specific problem that an organization has. And in so doing, this culture of openness and transparency starts to kind of feed on itself. And that's usually the way it works. I'll be honest, it's rare that we come in and completely transform an organization from the get-go to this sort of information transformation and openness. It's usually a step-by-step process. One group, one team, one department with an organization has the vision and sees it. They create a success, which is then sort of copied and replicated throughout the organization.
Great. Thank you, Dave.
Great.
Tulio, back to you with the question,
we
please.
have a question from Andrea Clow, who was a guest of ours, actually, right here on Dojo Live. She's the engineer whisperer. And her question is on LinkedIn Live. How do you train leadership to listen? Listen to solve a problem and not to deal with a person's issue.
Yeah, that's a
great question.
That's a great question. And I think just like I'd mentioned earlier about how we try to train all of our team members to be open to sharing their issues, it's repetition. It's establishing a system, establishing applications, software applications that can capture information and require feedback, require hearing. I think I want to make one really clear sort of application example. Talk about decision making. We've implemented a decision making application suite internally, which is essentially a process in which our leaders and our decision makers can create a record of a decision that they're sort of working on. And if it's actually our GM meeting, any decision that's being made at our executive GM meeting, it requires that our GMs enter in this decision they're working on, this issue, and that anyone in the organization can input their feedback and their opinions on a kind of a separate related app. And so it's sort of a process in which the leadership needs to make transparent the decision they're working on. And then anyone on the team who is interested, engaged, has the opportunity, and we actually like to say the responsibility, to raise their hand and provide input and feedback on that. And then ultimately the decision maker reviews issues and feedback to decision in the record based on the feedback. And so, whoever is sort of in agreement with that individual decision maker has some responsibility that, they agreed, they think it's a great idea. So it's there on record. And anyone who, was against the decision or had opposite feelings, that is there, and it's a clear record. And that decision maker needs to respond as to why, we're going in the other direction, or why I hear what you're saying, but this is why we're doing this. So we've established that type of process, and that's a system in place really about inclusion and transparency.
Interesting. So that also feeds into the other question, which is around, you mentioned about company habits, cultural habits. Much of what you're talking about requires discipline and requires it becoming a habit. The tools are great, but how are you instilling these habits of, not defaulting to perhaps someone who might be coming into the organization from 20, 30 years of being in a traditional hierarchical command and control structure? It's easy to revert back to that. It only takes minutes to revert back to that. Yeah. But how are you guys doing about building habits or encouraging habits that are within this paradigm that you've created? What's working?
Yeah. For us, I think primary is regular. We have our regular quarterly meetings, call them quarterly impact updates. Of course, before COVID, they used to always be in person. And we'd always spend one day working on issues, working on problems, having separate sessions around these issues, and using our framework, utilizing the structure that we developed for problem sharing and problem solving. We actually have a term for it called the aspiration engine. And so we would deploy these, and we would, teach team members how to facilitate these sessions. And then we would have these sessions on a regular basis. We just had our quarterly, we call them Q, our quarterly meetings, quarterly impact updates. And we just had it last week. And we had a number of just great sessions that are facilitated by different leaders. And they don't have to be a departmental leader. It's more of just like a session leader. And so we just do it on a regular basis, and we put it on the calendar, and we bring our team together. And so new people who join have the experience of going through these sessions and understanding, the process, and understanding the framework, and understanding the outcomes.
Dave, we got another question from the audience, again from Andrea Cloud as well. The question is, what is the name of the system?
So we have, I guess, various different systems or methods. So this sort of broader problem solving, problem sharing, problem solving methodology that we use, we do refer to it as the aspiration engine. We also have, something called the motivation model that we work through in terms of bringing together what individuals are able to do and what they want to do, and therefore they should be doing. We have, this decision-making process. We actually refer to a new system that we're working on as everyone's a board member. And this actually goes back to a pretty revolutionary thing that our parent company did at the end of last year. We transitioned our board of directors from kind of 3 relatively middle-aged to older gentlemen to 17 different team members, ranging from 21-year-old just out of college. We went from 3 males. Now we have, I think, 6 or 7 females on the board of directors. We went from, a very traditional Japanese board, which was something that, had been a thorn in the side of many people on the team, to actually the company in Japan that has the most, the highest female participation on a public company board in one fell swoop. And the underlying concept was, we have an incredibly transparent and open organization and sort of data platform, because everyone on our company uses Kintone, the platform, as well. So anyone should be able to sort of audit decisions being made by leadership. So anyone can be a board member, essentially. And so we actually kind of put our money where our mouth was and transform our board of directors through this. And now we're building out some solutions internally to encourage anyone beyond just those 17 board members, anyone in the organization, to question decisions and opine on decision-making processes that we're doing internally. And so that's another sort of system, which is anyone's a board member.
Amazing. I love it. I have to introduce you to the chair of the Design Thinking Executive Program at the University of California, Riverside. I'm a board member of that because this is the kind of thing that needs to be included in that conversation.
Love it. Yeah,
And you know, would you say that part of being inclusive, many companies talk about inclusivity, diversity, but it doesn't necessarily deal with the fact that part of being inclusive also means allowing people to just be themselves, but also speaking up and speaking their mind freely without fear of retribution, right? I feel as though without that, you really don't have true inclusivity. And so to achieve that, you kind of have to shift to this model you guys have created. What's your thought process on that? Because we're talking about how to be more inclusive, how to empower people, but that requires a bit more than just the action plan towards being inclusive, right? What's your thoughts on that?
No, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, it requires, we have this sort of transformation triangle that we talk about as well. And it requires having methods, having tools, but also having sort of activities, or we call them actions. And those three together, actualizations could be, leadership saying we want to be inclusive, or having events and activities around it. But you need the tools and you need other methods to be able to bring it all together. And we actually, our corporate vision is to create a society brimming with teamwork, but we have 4 cultural elements that lead toward that mission. And one is to share a common vision, but the other ones are to be transparent, is to embrace individuality, and the third one is to be yourself, take responsibility. And so those speak directly to what you're saying, Trulio, that you need to encourage folks to be themselves and embrace that individuality. We always use the graphical image of a rock wall. Everyone's a different size and shape, but if you put them all together in the right way and you allow everyone to be themselves, it can be a very powerful thing and a very good fitting, well-fitting thing for a team. But this idea of be yourself, take responsibility is that you have a responsibility to ask questions if you have any issue or any doubt. And in turn, every leader or anyone who's being asked questions has the responsibility to answer. And I think with those elements in place, that does allow inclusion in a much greater way. And not only that, what we've tried to do is create these systems that empowers people to be part of a decision-making, part of corporate decision-making, part of raising problems up. We encourage everyone to take part from their perspective, because again, we value everyone's perspective and their background. They can bring unique inputs and opinions to decisions. They can come from a unique perspective to come up with new problems that maybe other folks didn't see. And we need to value those and really encourage those.
Dave, we're approaching the final segment of today's conversation, but I wouldn't want to end it to ask without asking you specifically about the company, what we call the company culture as a whole. Let's say that we have viewers out there who might be, I don't know, designers or engineers who might want to come work for you at some point. What would you say to these people that would assure that you only reel in the best of the best in talent? Why do you feel that they should come work for you, and what makes it a great company to work for?
So about 15 years ago, we really started our own internal transformation, and it was based on a kind of a core concept around, 100 different people have 100 different work styles. And that sort of core concept has really been the driving force behind a whole lot of different sort of cultural directions and frankly, policies and approaches to managing our organization. And so, number one, we're very much on the cutting edge of technology with this sort of no code, democratization of software development. It's an amazing space to be in from a technology standpoint, but I think we're very unique in this particular space with our focus on the culture and tying in how our platform really reinforces our cultural focus. And what we're trying to do internally as a team is what we're also trying to do with our client organizations with our product. And so it's a really exciting integration of philosophy and product, which I think comes along, not that often. And it's a very unique place, and as such, I think a very inspirational and motivational place to work at.
Excellent. There you have it. Tulio, back to you for wrap up, please.
Andrew's got a bunch more questions, but we're out of time. So I'm going to encourage that she connect with you, because I think you guys could definitely benefit from that. Thanks for watching, everyone. Just stay with us. Thanks for being with us, Dave, as we go off the air in a minute. What an interesting conversation, right? How much of a difference can make in terms of having a different kind of culture that truly is more inclusive and empowering. Thanks for being with us today. Carlos, what do we got coming up? We have one more show tomorrow?
Well, Tulio, we got work to do, right? And that's exactly the topic for tomorrow's conversation with Anthony Molson, the CEO at Project Phoenix. That's the name of the company. And the topic is precisely software developers. Okay. We've got work to do. So join us tomorrow right here on Dojo Live at 12 p.m. Pacific, as usual. And don't miss it. And remember, be safe. And thanks, of course, Dave, for having joined us today on our show, Dojo Live. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Carlos and Tulio. Really appreciate it. It was a fun conversation.
See you next time.